Today Diana is with me here in the studio. Diana's a friend, and she's working on a quilt that has a panel in the inside surrounded by borders and blocks. And the challenge with this is that the panel itself is not square. We're trying to determine how to arrive at a way to make it square. The first thing that we do is we measure from corner to corner. Diana's holding one corner up there, and I'm going to go down here and measure it, and I end up with 53.5 inches. And we're going to switch sides over here. She's going to hold this at the top corner, the other top corner, and I'm going to go down, and we have 53 inches. So there's a half-inch outage from one corner to the other. In measuring other ways across here, we already determined by measuring across the top 34.5, and when we went to the bottom, we were we were 34.5 there. So top and bottom were the same, but diagonally different. And when we measure from top to bottom here, this was 40.5, and over here was 41. So there's something wrong with the dimensions of this. If we go ahead, if she goes ahead and just creates a quilt around this, every time she adds something onto the outside, we'll accentuate this out of squareness more and more until she gets to the outside. And when you look at that, it will be obviously out of square. So it's important at this point to square up the panel before she adds any borders around this and adds on her blocks and finishes her quilt. All right, we've taken our panel off the wall and put it on the cutting mat. The panel has been folded in the middle, across the middle, and I've sort of lined up the sides, both the sides here. The next thing that we're going to do to check and just make sure what's going on here with this panel is to take our ruler, and I'm going to lay one of the horizontal lines along the fold line of the panel, and you'll see what we have along the two edges, because it's important for those to be square and perpendicular to the fold. What I'm finding here is when this is pretty much on the edge, up here we have a good 1/4 of an inch of extra fabric. When I go to the other side and do the same thing, putting my horizontal line on the edge on the fold and go along the edge here, it's at the edge of the fabric up here, and there's a little bit to trim off here. So the next step we're going to do is to actually trim those two sides. All right, Diana has already gone ahead now and trimmed the sides of the quilt panel perpendicular to the fold that we have here. The next thing that we need to do is to determine what our cut is going to be across, which would be the top and bottom of this panel right here. And as I'm looking at what we have here already, over here some of the selvage edge is showing. This doesn't even come to the edge of the selvage edge here. At this point, the top panel, top of this is back of the bottom. The bottom is showing about a 1/4 of an inch, and over here on this side, the bottom is showing at least a 1/4 of an inch, or maybe a little bit more. So now that we have squared this right here, we have a nice perpendicular 90-degree corner at our fold. I know that these two cuts across here are the same distance apart. Yep. And you measure just about 34 1/8 of an inch both places along here. I'm going to be positioning the ruler at this point along the top here. Again, I'm going to use one of the horizontal lines on the ruler, putting it on my cut edge over here, and trying to minimize the amount of cut that we need to make here. We don't want to lose too much of our panel, but we have to make it even across here. Turn that off, I guess. Okay, positioning the horizontal line on our cutting ruler along our cut edge here. I'm going to make one more measurement just to make sure that things are okay. Taking my tape and laying the edge of it along the edge of the cutting ruler and measuring to the fold. I have 19 7/8 of an inch there. And over here at this end of the ruler, laying it down, I have 19 7/8 of an inch here. So when we get all done cutting, we'll put it back on the design wall and do another check to make sure that our panel is square. Okay, Diana has cut part of this side of the quilt panel and is positioning the ruler. What I'd like to point out here is the side of the ruler is along her cut edge, and again, trying to make sure our corners are square at 90 degrees. The cross line here on our ruler is even with this cut edge of our panel. So she's going to make the last cut now across that panel. We put the deer panel back up on the design wall and measured and discovered that we're pretty good corner to corner. Measuring across the top and across the bottom, it was just a hair over on the bottom, and top to bottom were perfectly the same dimension all the way across. In thinking ahead to the next step, we're going to use our measurements top to bottom, which in this case was 40 inches for our first border, which will go on the sides, and then the measurement 34 inches across the middle of it will be our dimension, plus the width of the borders on the sides for the top and bottom first border. So I think Diana is ready to go, and she'll be all set to start putting her borders on this beautiful looking quilt.